Tycoon left his wife for being infertile. 3 years later, he saw his son sing at a wedding. The city lights flickered like stars scattered across the earth. And from the penthouse window of a luxury apartment, Clara stood watching them in silence. The skyline was beautiful, cold, distant, untouchable, just like Daniel had become. Her reflection in the glass seemed like a stranger's. Her delicate features, once filled with laughter, were now shadowed by worry and longing. Behind her, the echo of footsteps broke the quiet. Daniel had arrived home late again. "Daniel," she said softly, turning with a gentle smile. "I made dinner. It's still warm if you're hungry." He didn't answer. He walked past her, loosening his tie, his eyes fixed on his phone. The scent of his cologne still made her heart flutter, but it no longer came with warmth. It came with distance. "I already ate," he muttered, not looking up. He headed to the study and closed the door behind him. Clara stood in the middle of the room, her smile fading slowly. For a long moment, she simply stood there, holding her breath, trying not to let the tears fall. This wasn't how it used to be. They had fallen in love during springtime, when he was still a rising tycoon full of fire and vision, and she was a music teacher who believed in simplicity, dreams, and Sunday mornings. He used to bring her lilies every weekend. He used to write little notes and hide them inside her piano. He used to laugh with her. But now he only looked through her. That night, as he slept beside her, facing the other way, she lay awake with her hand on her belly. It had been 2 years of trying. 2 years of clinics, tests, hope, and heartbreak. And still nothing. "Maybe next time," the doctor had said again. But how many next times were left before her husband gave up on her entirely? One rainy afternoon, she sat on the edge of their bed with the final medical report clutched tightly in her hands. Her fingers trembled as she read the word again. Infertility. Her chest tightened. She couldn't breathe. The door creaked open and Daniel stepped inside. His expression was unreadable, as if he already knew what the paper said. "It's confirmed," Clara whispered, her voice barely audible. "They said, I can't have children." There was a long silence. Daniel didn't reach for her. He didn't sit beside her. He just looked down, his jaw clenched, his eyes like stone. "Then what's the point?" he finally said, his voice cold and distant. She looked up, startled. "What do you mean?" He stepped back, running a hand through his hair. "I married you because I loved you, Clara. But love doesn't build a legacy. I need an heir, someone to continue my work. This isn't what I signed up for." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "You signed up for me, Daniel. Not my womb. Me." He turned away. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. My board, my mother. They all expect—" "I don't care what they expect," she cried, rising to her feet. "What about us? What about everything we've been through?" He didn't answer. He just picked up his coat. She followed him to the door, desperate, broken. "Daniel, please. We can try again. There are treatments, adoptions, options." "I don't want options, Clara," he snapped. "I want a child. Of my own blood. My own name." The words cut through her like knives. That night, he didn't come home. For the next week, the apartment was a graveyard. Clara tried to breathe, tried to smile at her students, tried to remember who she was before all this. But her heart was unraveling. Then one morning, Daniel returned. His expression was hard, resolved. "We need to talk." Clara sat down, her legs trembling. "I've already spoken to my lawyer," he said. "I want a divorce. I'll make sure you're compensated." She shook her head, stunned. "No, Daniel, don't do this. Please, I still love you." His voice was hollow. "This isn't about love anymore." She reached for him. He pulled away. "I can't live like this, Clara. I want a family, a real one." And with that, he walked out the door. She collapsed to the floor, the silence roaring in her ears. Her whole body shook as sobs escaped her throat, raw and uncontrollable. The man she had given everything to, her trust, her dreams, her youth, had just thrown her away like she was broken. But even in that moment, curled on the cold floor of what used to be their home. Something inside Clara refused to die. Clara moved through the rooms like a ghost. She avoided mirrors. She couldn't bear to see the woman staring back. Hollow eyes, trembling hands, a broken spirit. Every sound seemed too loud. Every second stretched endlessly. One morning, she woke up dizzy. Her stomach churned. She thought it was grief playing tricks again. She hadn't eaten properly in days. But when it happened again the next day and the next, something stirred inside her. Something irrational. Something impossible. She stared at the test in her hand, refusing to believe it at first. 2 lines. She blinked, her breath catching in her throat. Her heart thundered in her chest. She grabbed another test, then another. Then she called the clinic. Hours later, as the nurse gently confirmed the impossible truth, Clara sat in stunned silence. "You're 8 weeks along, Miss Martinez," the nurse said softly. "Congratulations." Tears streamed silently down Clara's cheeks. She didn't know if she was crying from joy, confusion, or heartbreak. All she could do was place a hand over her stomach. "You're here, you're real," she whispered. That night, she sat at the piano and played again. Not for Daniel, not for dreams of a perfect family, but for the life inside her. A life no one believed could exist. Weeks passed. The pregnancy was difficult. Clara battled nausea, fatigue, fear, but she endured. She sang lullabies to her belly, read stories aloud to the growing life inside her. Each heartbeat at the doctor's office reminded her that she wasn't alone. She kept her pregnancy a secret. The media had already picked apart her divorce. She didn't want her child to be born into gossip, headlines, or shame. She sold the apartment, withdrew quietly from the world, and left the city. She found a quiet village nestled between rolling hills and warm, humble people. There, she rented a small cottage with chipped paint and a garden that smelled of wild mint. It wasn't grand, but it was safe. Clara started giving private music lessons at the church. The villagers didn't care about her past. They only knew her as the kind woman with a soft smile and a heart full of music. They embraced her without questions. And when her son was born, on a rainy morning that mirrored the day Daniel had left, Clara cried harder than she ever had before. She held him close, his tiny hands curling around her finger. "Leo," she whispered through tears. "Your name is Leo, because you're strong, because you're my miracle." Her heart ached with love, the kind that bruises, the kind that heals. The nights were long. She woke up every few hours to feed him, to soothe his cries, to check that he was still breathing. Sometimes, in the quiet, she whispered stories to him. Stories of how he came to be, of how much he was wanted, even when the world said he shouldn't exist. She never spoke Daniel's name. He had made his choice. Leo was enough. Years passed. Clara raised her son with tenderness and strength. She sacrificed everything: opportunities, comfort, even sleep, to give him a life full of love. Their home was filled with music. Leo loved when Clara played the piano. He'd sit by her side, tapping keys with his chubby fingers, giggling when she let him press the pedals. By the time he was 3, his voice had already found melody. Clara couldn't believe the notes that came from such a small chest. Clear, angelic, pure. "He has your gift," said Father Antonio, the village priest, during one Sunday service. "That child, his voice reaches heaven." Clara smiled, pride glowing in her tired eyes. "He's a light I never expected. He saved me." Sometimes, late at night, Clara would lie awake, staring at the ceiling as Leo slept beside her. She would imagine what might have been, if Daniel had stayed, if he had held Leo, if he had heard him sing. But she pushed the thoughts away. Daniel had left before he ever knew Leo existed, and Clara had no intention of ever letting him back in. Not after everything. Still, there was a part of her buried deep who wondered, would Daniel ever know what he had lost? She kissed Leo's forehead and whispered to herself, "He doesn't deserve to." Clara hesitated, instinctively glancing toward the room where Leo was playing with his toy guitar. Her heart clenched. You told them about Leo? I only said he had a voice that touched God's heart, the priest said kindly. They don't know anything more, but it's a good opportunity. Just one song, and they'll donate to the church. Clara looked down at her hands. She had kept Leo sheltered for so long. No social media, no city trips, no exposure. But he was growing. He loved to sing. Maybe it was time. That night, she sat on Leo's bed, brushing his soft curls back. There's going to be a wedding soon, she said gently. Would you like to sing for the people? Leo's eyes lit up. At the big church? She nodded. Yes, he said, hugging her. Can I sing your song? Clara smiled softly. Of course, sweetheart. You can sing whatever you want. The week passed quickly. Clara prepared his little suit, ironed it 3 times, checked the lyrics with him over and over. Leo practiced every morning, standing on a chair in the kitchen, performing for the potted plants and their sleepy old cat. The wedding day arrived with sunshine and a gentle breeze. The cathedral was grand, its bells echoing across the valley. Clara held Leo's hand tightly as they walked in. She had chosen a seat behind one of the columns, away from the crowd. She didn't know anyone from the wedding, but she felt strangely nervous. She couldn't explain it. Across the aisle, unnoticed, Daniel walked into the cathedral with his business partner. The wedding was for the daughter of a major investor. Daniel didn't care much for social events, but this one mattered. As they sat down, Daniel rubbed his temple. He hadn't slept well. Lately, he never did. He glanced around the cathedral, the high arches and stained glass windows casting colored light across the pews. He sighed and checked his watch. Hopefully the ceremony is short, he muttered. And then Leo walked onto the small stage near the altar. Daniel wasn't looking at first. He was texting. But when the music began, soft piano chords played by a woman in the shadows, Daniel looked up and froze. The boy had his eyes. Daniel's heart stopped. He stared, unblinking, as the child stood there, holding the microphone with both hands. His suit was slightly big, his curls bouncing as he shifted nervously. And then he opened his mouth and sang. The voice silenced the entire cathedral. Clear, pure, innocent. Daniel felt something ripple through him, deep and unfamiliar, something like awe and something like fear. He leaned toward his colleague. Who is that boy? I don't know, the man whispered. The priest said he's local, a musical prodigy. Lives nearby. Daniel couldn't take his eyes off him. Leo finished the song, bowing shyly as the audience erupted in applause. He spotted his mother in the corner and ran to her, jumping into her arms. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He recognized her, the woman in the shadows, the pianist. The smile she gave the boy, it was Clara. He felt as though the air had been knocked out of his lungs. He rose abruptly. I have to go, he said. What? The reception? I said I have to go, Daniel barked, already moving. But he didn't go far. He stood at the side of the cathedral, waiting, watching. Minutes later, Clara and Leo came outside. She was adjusting his tie, kneeling before him. As he laughed and kissed her cheek. Can we get ice cream, Mama? He asked. Yes, baby, she said with a smile that melted Daniel's heart. You were perfect. He couldn't move. His legs felt like stone. Clara stood and turned, her eyes landing on him like a knife. Their gazes locked. Her smile vanished. Her hand reached protectively for Leo's shoulder. Daniel stepped forward, his voice low and broken. Clara. She didn't answer. Leo looked up at the man with curious eyes. Mama. Who's that? Daniel's throat tightened. Clara placed a hand on Leo's back. Go wait by the gate, sweetheart. But, now, Leo. The boy obeyed. Clara turned to Daniel, her eyes sharp, guarded. Her voice was barely above a whisper. What are you doing here? I didn't know, Daniel said, his voice trembling. Clara, I didn't know you were here. I didn't know about him. She laughed bitterly. Of course you didn't. You never cared to look. He took a step closer. She took one back. Clara, is he? No, she interrupted coldly. He's mine. That's all you need to know. Please, Daniel said, pain in his eyes. Please don't do this. Just tell me the truth. You want the truth? She said, her voice rising. The truth is, you walked away. You didn't just leave me. You crushed me. You told me I wasn't enough. And then you moved on as if I never existed. He looked down, ashamed. I was wrong, he whispered. So wrong. Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away. You don't get to feel regret now. Not when he's standing right there. Not after everything. Daniel looked over at Leo, his heart breaking. I just want to know him. She shook her head. No, you don't get to want now. You lost that right the day you walked out. She turned to leave. Clara, wait. Just one thing, he called. She stopped. He swallowed hard. Does he know about me? Her silence was answer enough. And then, without looking back, she walked away, holding Leo's hand tightly in hers, leaving Daniel alone with the echoes of a voice that sounded far too much like his own. He barely slept. He kept seeing Leo's face. That smile. The same dimples Daniel used to have as a child. The same way he tilted his head when he was shy. And Clara, God, Clara. She looked different, stronger, like the pain had shaped her into someone untouchable. He had imagined her miserable, alone, defeated. Instead, she had built a life. Without him. The next morning, he walked into the boardroom 10 minutes late, his tie loose, his shirt untucked. His mother, seated at the head of the table, gave him a sharp look. Rough night? She asked curtly. Daniel ignored her. He sat down and rubbed his eyes. Let's just start. The meeting droned on. Numbers, projections, a new resort development in Spain. But Daniel couldn't focus. Every time someone said growth or future, he thought of Leo, of the time he had lost. After the meeting, his mother followed him into his office. You look like hell, she said bluntly. He poured himself a glass of water and stared out the window. There's something you should know, he said quietly. His mother raised an eyebrow. This better not be another model with a scandal. He turned to face her, his voice heavy. Clara had a child. Silence. Her mouth opened, then closed again. That's impossible. The doctor said. They were wrong, Daniel interrupted. I saw him yesterday. He sang at a wedding. He looks exactly like me. She narrowed her eyes. Are you sure? Daniel nodded slowly. It's him. My son. There was a long pause. Then she crossed her arms. And what do you plan to do about it? I don't know, he whispered. She walked closer, her voice colder now. You divorced her because she couldn't give you an heir. That chapter is closed. His hands clenched at his sides. He's my son. You don't even know that for certain. I know. She studied him, then spoke softly, deliberately. Bringing them back into your life will complicate everything. The media, the investors, your image. I don't care about any of that. Don't be naive, she snapped. You made your decision. You can't just walk back into their lives like nothing happened. Daniel turned away from her. I have to try. Her voice dropped, almost threatening. Be careful. One wrong move and everything you've built could crumble. He didn't respond, because deep down he knew she was right, but he also knew something else. He had already lost too much time. That afternoon, Daniel drove back to the village. He didn't tell anyone. He just needed to see them again, to be close. He parked near the old church and walked through the small market square. Everything here felt slower, softer. People smiled as they passed, greeted each other by name. Felt like another world. He found her near the school. Clara was walking with Leo, holding his lunchbox, laughing at something he said. Daniel stood hidden behind a tree, heart pounding. Then Leo said something and ran ahead, his giggle echoing. Clara turned and froze. She saw him. This time she didn't look angry, just tired. She walked toward him, her arms crossed. Are you following us now? Daniel swallowed hard. I didn't know where else to go. Go back to your world, Daniel, she said, her voice flat. We don't need anything from you. I know you don't. he said gently. But I do. I need to make things right. She laughed bitterly. You think showing up here, watching from corners, is going to fix what you did? I didn't know, he said again, pleading. If you had, she interrupted. You would have done what? Stayed? Claimed him like property? You didn't want a child, Daniel. You wanted a legacy. There's a difference. He stepped closer. I didn't understand then, but I do now. She looked at him, eyes full of storm. Do you? He nodded slowly. He's not just a child. He's a miracle. And I walked away from both of you. She looked away. It's too late. Please, he said, voice cracking. Let me see him. Let me talk to him. She shook her head. No, he doesn't know you. And I won't let you confuse him just because you feel guilty. I'm not asking to be his father overnight, Daniel said, desperate. Just let me be near him. Let me earn it. Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. I can't protect him from you and from the world, she whispered. So if you stay far. And with that, she walked away again, her shoulders stiff, her steps fast. Daniel stood alone in the square, the warmth of the village suddenly colder. He had found his son, but he had no idea how to reclaim the family he lost. Each morning, he'd walk the narrow roads, pretending to be part of the town. He bought bread from the same vendor, coffee from the same cafe, always sitting where he could catch a glimpse of Leo on his way to school. He never approached. He just watched. Clara noticed. Of course she did. She saw him standing outside the bakery, saw the way he looked at Leo, like someone watching the sun through a window they weren't allowed to open. And part of her hated him for it. But another part, the part still bruised but not broken, couldn't ignore what she saw in his eyes. Pain. Real, raw pain. One afternoon, after music class, Clara was packing her sheet music when Father Antonio approached. He's been coming to Mass again, the priest said gently. Always sits in the back. Never says a word. Clara didn't look up. I know. He listens when Leo sings. He cries sometimes. Her hands trembled. She sat down on the bench. I don't know what to do, she whispered. Every part of me wants to protect Leo, but I see him, and I remember the man I fell in love with, and I wonder if that man's still in there somewhere. The priest gave her a kind smile. Maybe he is, but it's not about him, Clara. It's about what Leo needs. That night, she stayed awake long after Leo had fallen asleep. She sat by the window, watching the moonlight spill across the floor. She thought about how Daniel had once kissed her fingers, one by one, the night he promised they'd grow old together, how he had whispered dreams into her hair, how easily he had broken those dreams. But she also thought about the man standing in the cold morning mist, just to see his son from afar. And so, the next day, she left a note at the cafe where Daniel always sat. Meet me, tonight, behind the chapel. It was unsigned, but he knew. He arrived early, the sky still tinged with pink. He stood under the old oak tree, the scent of wood smoke in the air. His heart beat painfully in his chest. When Clara appeared, her arms crossed tight against the chill, Daniel could barely breathe. Thank you for coming, he said softly. This isn't a reconciliation, she warned. This is clarity. He nodded. She looked at him for a long time. Do you want the truth? The full truth? Yes. I didn't tell you about Leo because I didn't trust you, she said, her voice trembling. After you left, I found out I was pregnant, and for a second I considered calling you. But then I remembered how quickly you replaced me, how easily you said I was no longer enough. I was scared, Daniel whispered. No, she said firmly. You were cruel. He lowered his head. I was stupid. I thought love was something that could be replaced when it didn't give me what I wanted. And now, she asked, why are you here? He looked at her, his eyes full of shame. Because when I heard him sing, when I saw him, I knew he was mine, and I knew I had lost everything that ever mattered. Clara's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. You left me at my worst, Daniel. And you expect to be part of his life now that we're strong again. I don't expect anything, he said quickly. I want to try. I want to be someone he can be proud of. She turned away, folding her arms. Leo is gentle. He's bright. He sees the best in everyone. If you hurt him even once, I won't forgive you. Ever. I understand. She looked over her shoulder. You have one chance. You will not tell him who you are. Not yet. If he's meant to love you, it'll be because he chooses to. Not because of biology. Daniel nodded, a lump in his throat. Thank you. And you'll never come near him unless I say it's okay. He's my entire life. I won't let anyone shatter him. His voice cracked. I would never. Clara stared at him a moment longer, then walked away, leaving Daniel standing alone in the cold evening air. But something inside him had shifted. He wasn't just a man filled with regret anymore. He was a father. Even if his son didn't know it yet, she had made a decision. One she wasn't fully sure about, but one that felt necessary. Leo, she said gently, would you like to try something new this week? He looked up with his spoon midair, his brown eyes curious. Like what? Well, there's a man in the village, she began carefully, who used to be a very busy businessman, but now he's learning to enjoy the quiet. He wants to help with music at the church. He asked if he could sit in during your lessons, just to listen. Would that be okay with you? Leo tilted his head. Is he nice? Clara hesitated. He's trying to be. Leo smiled. Then okay. Clara touched his cheek and forced a smile. You're very brave. Later that day, Daniel waited outside the modest school building, pacing with nerves. He hadn't seen Leo up close since the wedding. His palms were sweating, heart pounding, as if he were stepping into the most important meeting of his life. When the door finally opened and Clara stepped out, her eyes met his briefly. She gave a small nod. He's ready, she said. Daniel followed her inside. Leo sat at the piano bench, his feet dangling a few inches off the ground. He turned and offered a wide grin. Hi, are you the music man? Daniel felt his throat tighten. Yeah, he said, forcing the words through. That's me. I'm Leo, he said brightly. Mama says I sing too loud. Sometimes. Daniel smiled. I don't think that's a bad thing. Clara sat in the back of the room watching closely. Her eyes never left either of them. Leo turned back to the piano, began playing a melody, his fingers small but sure. He started to sing. A song Daniel didn't recognize, but it felt familiar, full of longing and light. The sound wrapped around the room like a memory Daniel hadn't realized he was missing. Daniel swallowed hard. Did you write that? Leo nodded proudly. Me and Mama. I make up songs when I feel a lot of things. Daniel's smile faltered. You feel a lot of things often? Leo paused, thoughtful. Sometimes I feel like someone is missing, but I don't know who. Isn't that silly? Daniel blinked back sudden tears. No, not silly at all. After the lesson, as Leo packed his music sheets, Daniel knelt beside him. You have a real gift, he said softly. Do you think I can be famous? Leo asked, eyes shining. I think, Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. You can be whatever you want to be. Leo giggled and ran to his mother. Can he come again tomorrow? Clara hesitated, then nodded. If he's free. I'll be here, Daniel said quietly. The days passed like that. Daniel visiting the lessons, staying quiet, careful, letting Leo lead the pace. They laughed together, shared cookies Clara pretended not to have made especially for them. Leo talked about everything: school, music, bugs, dreams, while Daniel listened like each word was gold. One afternoon, Leo asked, Do you have kids? Daniel froze. Clara turned slowly from the bookshelf, her face unreadable. No, Daniel said, his voice low. But if I did, I'd want one just like you. Leo beamed. I think you'd be a good dad. Daniel couldn't respond. He just smiled and looked away, afraid he might cry. That night, Clara stood at her door as Daniel was leaving. "You've been patient," she said, her voice quiet. He nodded. "You've been kind." He looked at her. "I'm trying." She hesitated. "He's starting to ask questions." "I know. And when he finds out the truth, if he gets hurt?" Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. "Then I'll live the rest of my life making it right." Clara stared at him a moment longer. Then, slowly, she opened the door wider. "Come for dinner tomorrow," she said. "Not as a visitor, as someone who's part of his world." Daniel's breath caught. "Are you sure?" "I'm not," she said honestly. "But he deserves the choice." Daniel nodded, tears in his eyes. "Thank you." When he left, Clara leaned against the door, closing her eyes. She didn't know if she was doing the right thing, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like a step toward healing. He felt human. He arrived in a crisp button-down, holding a small bouquet of daisies and a box of cherry tarts from the village bakery. "For you," he said, holding them out awkwardly at the door. Clara looked at the flowers. Her expression softened. "You remembered my favorites." He gave a shy smile. "I never forgot." Leo came running. "You're here!" he shouted, grabbing Daniel's hand. "Come on. I want to show you my drawing before we eat." Daniel followed him inside, his hand swallowed by the boy's smaller one. Clara watched them walk ahead, her heart a strange mixture of fear and something dangerously close to hope. Dinner was easy, surprisingly easy. Leo did most of the talking, as always, telling stories about school, his secret club with one member himself, and how he was certain their neighbor's cat was spying on him. Daniel laughed, not politely but fully. The sound surprised even him. "You're really good at this," Clara said softly after Leo went to the kitchen to get napkins. Daniel looked at her across the table, his eyes shining. "I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just listening." "That's more than you ever did before," she said gently. He nodded. "I know." As the night wore on, Clara brought out tea and Leo, full and sleepy, curled up on the couch beside Daniel, resting his head on his arm. Clara tensed, unsure, but Leo looked peaceful, safe. "I used to imagine this," Daniel whispered, running his hand gently through Leo's curls. "I didn't even know it, but I think I was imagining him all along." Clara folded her hands, trying to steady her voice. "Then why did you let him go before he even existed?" Daniel looked up, the weight of years written across his face. "Because I was afraid. Because I thought everything had to be perfect. The legacy, the image, the control. And you were love. Messy, emotional, unpredictable love. I didn't know how to choose that over power." Clara's voice broke. "And now I'd give everything away," he said without hesitation. "Every cent, every title, just to hear him call me Dad. Just once." Clara turned her face away, blinking quickly. Her voice was low. "He doesn't know what it means. He thinks you're just a kind man who likes music and tarts." "I can live with that," Daniel said, "as long as he's smiling." There was a pause. Then, out of nowhere, Leo murmured in his half-sleep, "Are you staying for breakfast too?" Clara's eyes met Daniel's. He didn't answer the boy. He only looked at her. But she didn't say no. The next morning came gently, with sunlight spilling through the curtains and the smell of pancakes filling the small kitchen. Daniel was already up, sitting at the table with Leo as they decorated paper crowns. "I'm King Choco," Leo announced proudly, placing his on Daniel's head. "And you're Sir Butter." Daniel laughed. "I'm honored, Your Majesty." Clara leaned against the doorway, watching the two of them. Something tightened in her chest. Happiness and terror. After breakfast, Daniel helped clean. He moved like someone who wanted to earn his place in every detail. Then Clara walked him to the door. "You've done well," she said. "But it won't be enough forever. He'll want answers." "I'll wait," Daniel replied. "As long as it takes." She studied him. "And what about your world, Daniel? Your company? The press? Erica?" He flinched slightly. "That part of my life is cracking. Erica and I haven't spoken in months. The company doesn't feel like mine anymore. I'm starting to realize it never really was. Clara's voice lowered. What are you going to do? I don't know, he admitted. But I know where I want to be. He reached into his pocket and handed her a folded envelope. Just in case you want to know what I walked away from. She took it, confused, but didn't open it. I'm not here to impress you, he said. But you should know I've already started giving it all up. Slowly, quietly, I'm selling shares. I want to disappear from that world, Clara. I want this one. You think you can just erase the man you were? No, he said. But maybe I can bury him. She looked down at the envelope, then up at the man who once shattered her heart, and now stood before her, stripped of ego, holding nothing but regret and something terrifyingly close to love. I need time, she whispered. Daniel nodded. I'll be here, he said. As he walked down the path, Leo ran to the window, pressing his face to the glass. Bye, Sir Butter, he shouted. Daniel turned, smiled, and saluted, then walked away, still waiting, still hoping. Not for forgiveness. Daniel was careful, always careful, never overstepping, never pushing. He showed up when invited and left before the shadows stretched too long. But he watched Leo, every word, every laugh, every question, and carried those moments like fragile glass in his heart. And still, he hadn't told him. One Sunday afternoon, the three of them sat near the lake, where the sun broke into scattered gold over the water. Leo was collecting stones while Clara and Daniel sat on the grass nearby. He's different, Daniel said softly, watching him. He's everything I'm not. Clara looked at him, her face unreadable. You're not giving yourself enough credit. Daniel shook his head. You raised him without bitterness, without poison. That's you, Clara. That's your music in his heart. She looked away, blinking fast. Do you regret letting me back in? He asked. She hesitated. I don't know yet, she answered honestly. A gust of wind swept through the trees, carrying the faint sound of Leo singing to himself by the water. Daniel exhaled. I don't know how much longer I can keep this secret. I know, Clara whispered. Leo ran up then, interrupting the heaviness. Mama, Daniel, I wrote a new song. Wanna hear? Of course, Daniel smiled, patting the ground. Leo stood tall, clutching his imaginary microphone. It's called My Secret Star. He sang about light hiding in the sky, about waiting to be seen, about feeling someone near even when they're far. His voice carried through the open air, clear and trembling with something deep he didn't understand. But Daniel and Clara did. When he finished, he bowed dramatically, then plopped into Clara's lap. Where do you learn to write like that? She asked, kissing his forehead. Leo shrugged. It just comes. Maybe from Papa. Silence. The word hit the air like a stone dropped in still water. Clara froze. Daniel's breath caught. Leo didn't notice. He stood again and ran off to find more stones. Clara stared at Daniel, her voice barely a whisper. He's never said that before. I didn't say anything, Daniel said quickly. I swear. I know, she said. That's what scares me. Later that night, after Daniel had gone and Leo was asleep, Clara sat alone at the kitchen table. She finally opened the envelope Daniel had given her. Inside were signed documents, transfers, sales, resignations. A letter. Clara, this isn't proof of change. It's a beginning. I can't undo what I've done. I can't give you back the years. But I can give you this one truth. I want to be his father. Not the man who left you. Not the man I pretended to be. But the man he needs. Whatever that costs me. Daniel. Clara folded the letter slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. She whispered to the quiet room, "Why now?" But part of her already knew the answer. A few days later, Father Antonio stopped Clara after Mass. "There's a ceremony next month," he said. "A wedding. One of the mayor's daughters. They've asked for Leo again." Clara blinked. "Another wedding?" He nodded. They said his voice moved them. They want something real. And Leo, he's real. Clara hesitated. "It's a big event. Many people. From the city. Father Antonio placed a gentle hand on her arm. I just thought you should know. She spent the night thinking about how Leo would smile when he sang, how proud Daniel looked watching him, how the secret between them was growing heavier by the day. When morning came, she looked at Daniel across the cafe table, her voice quiet. He's going to sing at another wedding. Daniel looked up, his face full of worry and wonder. Where? At the cathedral. Next month. He swallowed. Do you think he's ready? She looked into his eyes. I think we're running out of time. Daniel nodded slowly. The truth was coming. Mama, he whispered. Why are you nervous? She paused, knelt in front of him, and gently cupped his face. Because you're about to make a lot of people cry today with your song. Leo grinned. Then I'll sing really big. Clara kissed his forehead, then straightened his collar with a trembling smile. That's my boy. Outside, Daniel waited near the cathedral steps, dressed in a simple dark suit. He wasn't a guest. He wasn't invited. But Clara had told him it was time. He didn't know what that meant exactly, but his heart hadn't stopped pounding since sunrise. He saw them as they approached. Clara, calm but pale. Leo, skipping beside her, holding a folder with his music sheets. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Clara nodded once as they reached him. He's ready. Daniel looked down at the boy and smiled. You look like a star, Leo. Leo beamed. I'm going to sing your favorite one. Daniel blinked, stunned. Mine? Leo nodded, then whispered. The secret star song. Daniel's throat tightened. He looked at Clara. She didn't speak, but she didn't stop him either. Inside, the cathedral was filled with soft chatter and camera flashes. Elegant guests in designer clothes filled the pews. But as Leo took his place near the altar, the noise faded. He stood in the same spot he had before. Only this time he was older, wiser, louder, and Daniel this time didn't sit in the shadows. He stood at the back watching. Leo's voice rose into the high arches, strong and full of wonder. The lyrics he had written poured out like truth, about searching for light, about something lost and found, about love without a name. The entire cathedral stilled. Clara stood near the edge, her fingers clasped tightly in front of her chest. Daniel had never cried in public, but he was crying now, because this time he saw it all. The child he never knew, the woman he'd broken, the miracle he didn't deserve, and yet stood before him anyway, holding the pieces together. When Leo finished, there was silence for a beat, then thunderous applause. The boy bowed, shy but proud, then ran straight into Clara's arms. You were amazing, she whispered, tears streaking her cheeks. Daniel stood frozen, and then, to his shock, Leo ran toward him too. Did you like it? He asked, eyes wide with hope. Daniel crouched, his voice cracked and low. It was perfect, just like you. Leo tilted his head. Why are you crying? Daniel laughed softly, brushing a tear away. Because sometimes, happy things hurt too. Leo looked confused. Do I make you happy? Daniel looked at him, eyes full of unspeakable emotion. More than you'll ever know. Then Leo did something unexpected. He wrapped his arms around Daniel's neck and hugged him tight. Clara watched from a distance, her heart beating too fast. Later, as they walked away from the cathedral, Leo skipped ahead, chasing butterflies between the hedges. Clara and Daniel lagged behind. He's starting to guess, she said quietly. I know. He asked me last night if maybe you were like a dad. Daniel's steps faltered. What did you say? I told him sometimes the people who love us most come back to find us. They stopped under an old stone archway. Daniel turned to face her. Clara, I'm ready to tell him, to take responsibility. All of it. She looked at him, searching his face. And if he doesn't forgive you, I'll still stay. A long silence passed between them. Then Clara whispered, Tomorrow, after school, we'll talk to him together. Daniel nodded, a deep breath shaking in his chest, as Leo turned back and waved at them, calling out, Come on, slowpokes! Daniel felt it, The shift, the crack in the silence between them finally beginning to open. Daniel arrived early. Again. He stood at the door, his eyes filled with silent questions. "Are you sure?" he asked. Clara didn't answer right away. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "We said we'd give him the truth. He deserves it." He stepped inside, and the air between them felt thick, fragile, like a window right before it breaks. Leo burst through the front door just after 4, backpack bouncing, shoes half untied. "I'm home," he called out, dropping his things near the couch. Clara met him in the living room, Daniel standing a few steps behind her. "Hi, sweetheart," she said gently. "Come sit down for a second. We want to talk to you." Leo blinked, confused. "Am I in trouble?" Clara smiled and shook her head. "No, baby, not at all." He climbed onto the couch, swinging his legs, then looked up. "Is this about my song again? Did someone else cry?" Daniel let out a breath that sounded a lot like a laugh trying not to become a sob. "No," Clara said, sitting beside him and taking his hand. "It's about you and us." Leo's smile faded a little. "What do you mean?" Daniel knelt down in front of him. His voice shook as he spoke. "Leo, do you remember when you asked if I had any kids?" Leo nodded. Daniel continued, "I told you no, but that wasn't the truth." Leo frowned, turning to look at Clara. "Sweetheart," she whispered. Daniel didn't know back then, but he knows now. Leo's voice was small. "Knows what?" Daniel reached into his pocket and took out a small photograph. It was old, faded, but it showed a younger version of him and Clara smiling at a piano. He held it out. "That's me and your mom, from before you were born." Leo stared at it, then looked back at Daniel. "I don't get it." Clara's voice was thick with emotion. "Baby, Daniel is your dad." The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was sharp, like something slicing the air open. Leo blinked, then looked between them again. "You're my real dad?" Daniel's eyes filled. "Yes." Leo was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up and took a step back. "Why didn't you tell me?" Clara rose slowly. "Because I was trying to protect you. We thought we didn't know how to do this the right way. We didn't want to hurt you." Leo looked at Daniel now, eyes suddenly older. "Did you not want me?" Daniel's voice cracked as he stepped forward. "No, Leo, I didn't know about you. Not until recently. But if I had... God, if I had... Would you have stayed?" Leo asked, not accusing, just needing to know. Daniel froze. Clara held her breath. And then Daniel dropped to his knees again, lowering his head. "I failed you," he whispered. "I failed both of you. But I want to be here now. I want to earn your trust. Not just be your dad in name, but in everything." Leo looked at him, his expression unreadable. "I don't know if I can call you that yet," he said quietly. Daniel nodded, tears sliding down his cheeks. "That's okay. You don't have to. Just let me be near. Let me try." Leo turned to Clara. "Is it okay if I think about it?" Clara knelt beside him, pulling him into her arms. "Of course, my love. As long as you need." Leo leaned into her, silent, holding on tight. Daniel stayed there on his knees, not reaching out, just waiting. Waiting for a sign, a chance, anything. After a long pause, Leo spoke again. "I feel weird," he said softly. "Like I'm happy, but also kind of scared." Clara stroked his hair. "That's okay. So are we." He looked at Daniel once more. "If you really want to be around, you have to learn how to play soccer. I need a goalie." Daniel choked out a laugh. "Then I'll be the best goalie in the world." Leo gave a half smile. "We'll see." And then he picked up his backpack and wandered down the hall, needing space. Clara and Daniel were left standing in the quiet, the truth finally out, the weight of it still hanging in the air like smoke. Clara looked at him. "You were honest." Daniel met her eyes. "Because you gave me the chance." She nodded, slowly. "We'll see what happens next." Daniel exhaled. Daniel didn't try to push his way in. He came by in the evenings, sat on the porch if Leo wasn't ready to talk, and sometimes just listened to the boy play from inside. He helped Clara with small repairs around the house, quiet things that didn't demand thanks. And Clara, watching him from the kitchen window, found herself asking questions she didn't want to answer. She hadn't forgiven him. Not fully, but part of her was no longer trying to hate him. One Friday afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Daniel waited by the garden gate. Clara was tending to her herbs, her sleeves rolled up, fingers deep in soil. "He hasn't said much," Daniel said softly, "but he doesn't hide when I come anymore." "That's something," Clara replied, gently pinching dried leaves from a stem. Daniel shifted. "I want to take him somewhere, just the two of us, just for a few hours." Clara looked up sharply. "I won't do anything without your trust," he added quickly. "I just want a real conversation, somewhere outside this house, somewhere neutral." She studied him. "Where?" "There's a little music shop on the edge of town. They have a room with an old baby grand. I thought maybe he'd like to see it. Play something." Clara hesitated. Then finally she nodded. "If he agrees." Daniel exhaled, relief in his shoulders. "Thank you." That night, Leo sat curled on the couch, reading one of his music books when Clara sat beside him. Daniel asked if you'd like to go somewhere tomorrow. Just you and him. A music store with a piano. Leo looked up slowly. "Will you be there?" "No," she said gently. "This one's just you two. But if at any moment you feel uncomfortable, you call me. I'll come get you." Leo was quiet. Then he nodded. "Okay, I want to hear what he has to say." Clara kissed his forehead, heart tight with worry. "Be honest with him, and listen too, but only if you want to." The next day, Daniel stood outside the gate again, this time with 2 sodas in hand and a nervous smile. Leo met him with a backpack slung over one shoulder and a notebook under his arm. "You ready?" Daniel asked. Leo shrugged. "I guess." The walk to the music shop was quiet at first. Daniel didn't try to fill the silence. After a few minutes, Leo asked, "Were you scared when Mama told you about me?" Daniel looked down, terrified. "Why?" "Because I realized I'd missed everything," Daniel said. "Your first steps, your first words, your first song. And I knew I couldn't go back and change it." Leo looked ahead, thoughtful. "I think you make Mama nervous." Daniel nodded. "I know. Do you still love her?" Daniel stopped walking. Leo turned, waiting. "Yes," he said honestly. "I never stopped. But I didn't understand how to love her back then. I was selfish. I let fear and pride control me." Leo was quiet again. Then he asked, "Do you want to be my dad? Or just be around?" Daniel's voice cracked. "I want to be your dad. But only if you want that too." They reached the shop. Inside, the smell of old wood and polished keys wrapped around them like history. In the back, a dusty room held the piano. Leo ran his hand over the surface reverently. "Can I play?" he asked. Daniel nodded, sitting nearby. Leo opened his notebook and began. The melody was familiar, one of his own. But this time he played it with pauses, softer touches, thoughtful notes. Halfway through, he stopped. "I wrote this one," he said, "after Mama cried one night. I didn't know why, but I knew the sound of it." Daniel swallowed. "What do you think the sound of crying is?" Leo looked down at the keys. "It's like when the note almost plays but holds back, like it's scared." Daniel wiped his face with his sleeve. "I heard your voice at the wedding," Leo said. "You were crying, and it sounded like that." Daniel didn't try to explain. He just listened. Leo turned to him. "If I say yes, if I say you can be my dad, will you stay forever?" Daniel stood, walked over, and knelt in front of him. "I will stay even if you say no," he said, eyes locked on his son. "I'm here for you, not for what I want from you, just you." Leo was silent. Then, slowly he leaned forward and hugged him. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But it was real. "I'm still mad a little," Leo whispered. "But I don't want to keep wondering. I want a dad." Daniel held him tight, tears falling freely now. Then I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to wonder again. When they reached the garden gate, Clara was already outside, pretending to water the plants but really just waiting, every minute stretching against her chest. Leo ran to her and hugged her tight. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice low, careful. He nodded. "We played music, talked a lot." He cried. Clara's eyes lifted to Daniel, who stood behind him, silent and unreadable. Leo looked up at her. "Can he come for dinner again tonight?" Clara hesitated only a moment, then nodded. "Go wash your hands," she said softly. Leo disappeared inside. Daniel took a step closer. "He asked if I'd stay forever." Clara's face didn't change. "What did you say?" "I said I would stay even if he didn't want me." She turned to him, her voice trembling. "And if I asked you to leave?" Daniel met her eyes. "Then I'd leave, but I'd still find a way to show up for him. Quietly, from a distance. I don't need your forgiveness to love him, or to love you." Her breath caught. She hadn't expected that. Inside, dinner was quieter than usual. Not awkward, just full of thoughts too big for words. After the dishes were done and Leo went to brush his teeth, Clara poured 2 cups of tea and placed one in front of Daniel. "You really meant what you said?" she asked. "I've never meant anything more." She looked down at the cup, fingers trembling around the rim. "He's been my world for so long, just mine. Letting you in. It feels like handing someone my heartbeat." Daniel's voice was soft. "Then I'll protect it like it's my own." They sat in silence, the night stretching long. And then Clara said something she hadn't said in years. "You broke me, Daniel. But I think, maybe, just maybe, you're helping me heal now." He didn't answer. He just reached across the table, took her hand, and held it gently. That night, as Daniel walked home under the stars, the world felt different, brighter. And in Clara's home, as she tucked Leo into bed, he looked up at her with sleepy eyes and asked, "Mama, are we going to be a real family now?" It never does, not when something fragile begins to bloom. Something always comes for it. Clara was walking back from the bakery when she saw the sleek black car parked outside her house. A man in a crisp suit leaned against the hood, sunglasses hiding his eyes. She froze. The door opened. From the passenger seat, a woman stepped out, tall, elegant, and familiar in the worst way. "Erica." Clara's blood ran cold. The woman smirked, adjusting her designer coat as she approached. "Still living like a saint, I see." Clara stood her ground, voice cool. "What do you want?" "I want what belongs to the Carrington name." Erica's words were sharp. "And I have no intention of letting a bastard and a village mouse ruin that." Clara flinched. "You're not part of his life anymore." Erica's laugh was bitter. "You think it's that simple? Daniel and I may be separated, but that doesn't mean I'm done. Especially now that I hear there's a child. One with his blood." Clara's voice dropped, deadly calm. "You stay away from my son." "Sweetheart," Erica said, stepping closer. "This isn't about your little fantasy. This is about legacy. And if that boy is really Daniel's, you better believe people will come asking. Lawyers, journalists, investors. And when they do, what do you think they'll see? A single mother and a child born out of scandal." Clara's hands curled into fists. "We don't want anything from you, or from that world." "Maybe you don't," Erica hissed. "But the board of Carrington Enterprises does. And once the secret gets out..." "It's not a secret," Daniel's voice cut in sharply. They both turned. He was standing behind them, his face pale with fury. Clara's heart jumped. "Get in the car, Erica," he said. She tilted her head. "You're really doing this?" "I already did." "You're walking away from everything," she snapped. "From the empire. I'm walking toward my son." Erica laughed, venom in her voice. "That boy will never belong in our world." "Then it's a good thing," Daniel said, his voice trembling with emotion, "that we're not part of that world anymore." Erica stared at him, rage rising in her throat, but she said nothing more. She turned, heels clicking sharply as she got into the car. The engine roared and sped away, leaving dust and tension behind. Clara looked at him, breathing hard. How did she know? She's been watching, he said. Someone told her. Maybe someone at the board. It doesn't matter. It does matter, Clara said, voice cracking. She threatened Leo, our son. Daniel walked to her, reached for her hands. She won't get near him again. I promise you. She'll go to the press, Clara said. She'll destroy everything we've built here. Then we rebuild, Daniel whispered. But this time together. Tears filled Clara's eyes. I can't lose him, Daniel. You won't. He held her face in his hands. I swear, I will protect you both, no matter what it takes. Inside, Leo peeked through the curtains, clutching the stuffed lion he'd had since he was 2. He couldn't hear everything, but he saw the fear on his mother's face, the tension in Daniel's shoulders. And he knew their little world was about to change, and nothing would be the same again. Tycoon's hidden son. Daniel Carrington's secret heir found in Mountain Village. Her heart sank. She scanned the article with shaking hands. It was all there: Leo's name, his age, a photo of Daniel outside the chapel. No picture of the boy, thankfully, but enough to draw attention. Enough to open wounds she'd worked so hard to heal. By the time Daniel arrived, she was already packing Leo's things. Clara, he said breathlessly, stepping inside. I saw it. I'm so sorry. She didn't look at him. He's not safe here now. I have to get him out. Where will you go? I don't know, she snapped, her voice cracking. Somewhere far. Somewhere they won't follow. Daniel walked closer, trying to stay calm. You don't have to run. Let me handle this. You can't handle this, she cried. This is your world, Daniel. This is what I tried to protect him from. He looked at her, pleading. Let me fix it. How? She said, tears streaming now. How do you fix a childhood ripped apart by headlines and strangers? How do you fix a son seeing his face on a screen next to a number he doesn't understand? Leo stood quietly in the hallway, half-dressed, backpack on his shoulders. Mama, he whispered. Clara turned, immediately softening. Baby, we're just going to take a little trip. Okay? Just the 2 of us. Leo looked at Daniel. But you said you'd stay. Daniel knelt, eyes filled with pain. I will, Leo. I'm not going anywhere. Leo frowned. Then why does Mama look like she's breaking? Clara closed her eyes. Daniel reached out. Clara, look at me. Please. She turned slowly, defeated. I will talk to the press. I will make a statement. I'll tell them this is none of their business. That you and Leo are not a story. You're a family. My family. They won't care, she whispered. They'll twist it. They always do. Then let me give them something they can't twist, he said firmly. Let me go on record. Let me tell the truth, not just about Leo, but about everything. About what I did to you. About what I walked away from. Let me take the shame they're trying to put on you and wear it. Clara's lips parted, stunned. You do that? She whispered. I have to, he said. Not just for you. For him. Leo tugged on Clara's hand. Mama, I don't want to run. She sank to her knees and hugged him tightly. You don't have to, sweetheart, she whispered. You're not the one who should hide. Later that day, Daniel stood in front of cameras for the first time in months. No PR manager. No rehearsed speech. Just him. He took a breath. I'm Daniel Carrington. And yes, the boy in that article is my son. But he's not a secret. He's a gift. One I didn't deserve. He paused, voice thick. I walked away from a woman who loved me because I let the weight of legacy blind me. She raised our son with grace and strength I never had. I don't want sympathy. I want accountability. I am not here to reclaim anything. I'm here to stand beside them. Not in front. Not above. Just beside. And if anyone wants to publish another headline, let it be this: man finally grows up. He walked off, ignoring the flashes. That night, Clara sat beside him on the porch, both of them silent. Then she said softly, that was brave. He looked at her. You've been braver. They sat in the quiet. And for the first time, Clara didn't feel like they were bracing for a storm. They were standing in the middle of it. Together. The village had changed. Not because of the press or the whispers, but because Leo had become more than just the little boy who sang in church. He was now someone the world had seen and heard, and people, even from outside the town, began coming just to hear him sing. Father Antonio approached Clara after Mass. "There's a special service next Sunday, a tribute to families. I was thinking, if Leo wanted to sing, perhaps this time you and Daniel could be with him." Clara hesitated. He smiled gently. "He's not just singing anymore. He's healing hearts. Even yours." She nodded slowly, tears already stinging her eyes. When she told Leo that night, he clapped his hands with excitement. "Can I sing our song?" Clara glanced at Daniel, then back at her son. "Yes, baby. I think it's time." Daniel spent every evening after that in the living room, working with Leo on the arrangement. They sat side by side at the piano, sometimes correcting each other, sometimes laughing until tears rolled down their cheeks, and sometimes just sitting quietly, letting the music say what words couldn't. Clara watched them from the hallway more than once, her heart too full to speak. The day of the service arrived under a sky so blue it felt painted. The church was filled, every pew taken. Strangers and neighbors alike gathered in quiet reverence. Leo stood at the front with a mic almost too big for his hand. Clara and Daniel sat in the first row, side by side, holding their breath. He looked out at the audience, then back at them. "I wrote this with my mom," he said, voice clear. "And now my dad helped too. It's for anyone who ever lost something and found it again." The crowd hushed. The first note floated like a whisper. Leo sang about light breaking through cracks, about voices that return in dreams, about forgiveness that doesn't shout, but stays. The room was still. More than a performance, it felt like a confession, a reunion, prayer. When he reached the final chorus, he looked straight at Daniel. "And if I didn't know your name, I'd still know your heart, because it sings the same song I've known from the start." Daniel couldn't hold it in. Tears streamed freely, and for once, he didn't wipe them away. He let the whole world see what redemption looked like when it came wrapped in a child's voice. When the song ended, there was silence. Not out of shock, but reverence. Then applause. Thunderous. Not for a performance, but for a moment that stitched something invisible back together. Afterward, as people slowly filtered out, Leo ran into Daniel's arms. "Did I do okay?" Daniel held him close, voice shaking. "You did more than okay. You changed the air." Clara approached, her eyes shining. Leo looked between them. "Mama, Daddy." She blinked at the word. Daniel did too. Leo grinned. "We sound like a real team now." Clara smiled, taking Daniel's hand for the first time in front of others. "We are, baby." And in that sacred silence, under that painted blue sky, 3 hands came together. Not perfect, but finally whole. One evening, Clara sat at the piano while Daniel fixed the crooked cabinet door she'd ignored for years. Leo was lying on the rug, drawing a rocket ship family. 2 big figures, one small, all flying together toward a bright yellow sun. Daniel glanced over his shoulder. "Is that us?" Leo nodded without looking up. "We're finally in the same spaceship." Clara smiled, her fingers brushing over the keys. "That's beautiful, sweetheart." Daniel tightened the final screw and sat beside her. "I never imagined that something so broken could become something better." Clara looked at him. "It didn't happen on its own. We fought for it. Every step." He nodded, then reached into his jacket and handed her a small envelope. "There's something I want you to see." Clara opened it carefully. Inside were finalized documents, confirmation that Daniel had sold off his remaining shares, cut ties with the board, relinquished his seat. All of it. She looked up, stunned. "You did it." "I wanted my hands free," he said quietly, "so I could build something with them. With you." Her eyes welled with tears, but she blinked them away, too full to speak. Daniel reached into his pocket again, then paused. His hand hovered, unsure. "Clara," he began slowly, I don't want to rush you. I don't want to force anything. But there's one thing I know for certain. She held her breath. He pulled out a small velvet box. Leo looked up just as Daniel opened it, revealing a simple gold band. Clara's breath caught. Daniel's voice trembled. This time, I don't come with expectations. I come with truth. I come with love that has learned how to stay. Leo sat up. Wait, is this like the movies? Clara laughed through her tears, her hand over her mouth. Daniel looked at her. You don't have to say yes, but I had to ask. Clara stood slowly, walked to him, and took the box in her hands. She looked down at it, then up at him. You're right, she whispered. This isn't like before. She glanced at Leo. This time we say yes together. Leo jumped up and hugged both of them at once. Then I say yes. Daniel laughed, tears streaming now, as Clara leaned in and kissed him. Slow, deep, real. Not a fairy tale, but something better. A second chance that bloomed. So the wedding was held in the village courtyard, beneath the old tree where Leo first showed Daniel his drawings. Lanterns hung from the branches. Wildflowers rested in jars on every table. The guests were neighbors, friends, and those who had watched Clara raise Leo with quiet strength. Leo stood in front of the small altar in a buttoned vest and sandals, holding the ring box with solemn pride. Daniel stood in a simple suit, his hands clasped, his heart thundering louder than the bells that would ring. Clara walked down the short stone path in a pale blue dress, barefoot, holding a bouquet of lavender and thyme. The whole village hushed. Leo was the first to speak. My name is Leo, he said, glancing at the crowd with a nervous smile. I'm the one who brought them back together. Everyone laughed gently, warmly. He turned to his mother. Mama taught me how to love with music. He turned to Daniel. And Papa taught me that even grown-ups can say sorry. Clara's lips trembled. Daniel looked down, overwhelmed. Leo took a breath. I think people are like songs. Some are loud, some are soft, some are hard to listen to, but the best ones, they make you feel something you didn't know you needed. The silence that followed was heavy with tears. Clara stepped forward, eyes on Daniel. I never thought I'd stand here again, she whispered. And I never thought I'd forgive you, but you kept showing up. And more than that, you stayed. You didn't run when it got hard. You let yourself be broken so you could be real. Daniel took her hands, his voice shaking. I spent so long trying to build an empire, but you were always the home. You and Leo, you're the only thing I ever truly built with love. There were no formal vows, just truth. When the priest gave the nod, Leo stepped up and opened the box. 2 simple gold bands glinted in the soft dusk light. Daniel slipped hers on with reverence. Clara did the same. They kissed, quiet, full of everything unsaid. The bells rang. The village clapped. But it was Leo who sang. He stepped onto a small crate, hands behind his back, and began the song they had written together, My Secret Star. Only this time it wasn't a secret anymore. His voice soared, strong, sure. He sang of love that waited, love that healed, love that held on even when it had no reason to believe. Daniel held Clara's hand. Clara wept quietly, and somewhere in the song they all realized something. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning. But amid the warmth, Clara sat quietly beneath the tree, watching it all. The flicker of lights in Leo's hair as he spun with other children. The way Daniel leaned over to help an elderly neighbor tie her shawl. She felt full, so full it almost scared her. Daniel found her there, kneeling beside her with a small plate of berries and honey. You okay? He asked. She nodded, just trying to believe it's real. He smiled, setting the plate between them. I ask myself the same thing every 5 minutes. They sat in silence for a moment, the kind that feels safe. Then Daniel reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small, wrapped in cloth. What's that? Clara asked softly. I found it yesterday in one of the old boxes I kept from our apartment, he said, unfolding the fabric. Inside was a worn, folded letter, creased and faded with time. Clara gasped. I wrote it the day I left. Daniel said quietly. But I never sent it. I didn't have the courage. It's everything I never said. She hesitated, then slowly reached for it. Her eyes moved over the first lines. Her breath hitched. Clara, if I could tell you one thing without the noise of fear, it would be this. I'm not leaving because I don't love you. I'm leaving because I'm weak. Because I don't know how to hold on to something so fragile without breaking it. But I already have, haven't I? Her fingers trembled. You were the song I didn't deserve to hear. The melody I never learned to play. And if someday I find the strength to become the man you always believed I could be, I hope I'll find you again. She pressed the letter to her chest, eyes filling. Daniel's voice cracked. I never believed you'd take me back. Not after what I did. But when I saw Leo, when I saw what you made without me, everything I thought I knew about love shattered. Clara looked at him, eyes soft and wet. You didn't find me again, Daniel. You found us. He reached for her hand, gently tracing her fingers. I want to grow old with you, he whispered. I want to hear Leo's voice change. I want to see you laugh in every kitchen we ever live in. I want to fail and rebuild and love you over and over again. She rested her head on his shoulder, the stars beginning to appear overhead. Then let's make that our song, she murmured. Later that night, as the lanterns flickered low and Leo curled up between them on a blanket under the sky, Clara watched Daniel hold their son's hand as he drifted off to sleep. And for the first time in years, there was no ache in her chest. Only peace, only love. Clara entered the room with a mug of tea, pausing when she saw his face. What are you thinking about? She asked gently. He turned to her. About that first wedding. When I sang and Papa saw me for the first time. She sat beside him. That day changed everything. I didn't know it, Leo said. But I felt it. Like a part of me was waking up. Clara wrapped an arm around him, heart full and aching. You have a strong heart. That's why you felt it. He was quiet for a long moment. Do you think things could have been different? He asked. If he'd stayed. She looked out the window with him. Maybe. But maybe we had to break first to really understand how to hold each other. Leo nodded, thoughtful. I'm glad I have both of you now. That afternoon, the three of them sat at the old piano. Daniel held a sheet of music while Leo plucked out the opening notes of a new song they were writing together. What's it called? Daniel asked. Leo looked up. Home again. Clara smiled. That sounds right. Daniel placed his hand over Clara's. You know, all those years ago, I thought legacy meant steel and towers. Now I know it means lullabies and breakfasts and forgiveness that shows up every day. She turned to him, her voice soft. Then you're richer than you ever were before. They played, they sang, they stumbled through verses. Laughter filled the house like sunlight through open windows. And then, life went on. Seasons shifted. Leo turned 12, then 13. His voice changed, deeper now but no less magical. He sang at festivals, weddings, even in small city events, always returning home, always keeping their little village as the place where his roots held. Clara continued to teach music, her hands never losing grace. And Daniel, once the man of headlines and suits, now ran a community music center, a place where children found their voices and families found healing. One evening, as autumn leaves curled along the garden path, the three of them sat on the porch wrapped in a shared blanket. A breeze moved gently through the trees. Leo looked at his parents. I think the reason I sing so loud, he said suddenly, is because I was quiet for so long. Clara reached for his hand. And now, she whispered, you sing for all the parts of us that once stayed silent. Daniel added softly, and we'll never stop listening. Leo looked up at the stars, his eyes bright. I think love is the best kind of echo, he said. Clara smiled through tears, and Daniel, resting his arm around them both, whispered, then may this echo never fade. Under the night sky, in a place once broken by absence, a family sat whole, rebuilt not by perfect choices, but by the courage to return, the grace to forgive, and the beauty of voices that finally found their harmony. And far off in the distance, the echo of Leo's song could still be heard, carrying a legacy no empire ever could. A legacy called